Heidi Chance is a distinguished law enforcement professional with over 27 years of dedicated service. Throughout her career, she has been at the forefront of combating sex trafficking, bringing her vast experience, real truths, lived experiences as an undercover officer, and impactful case study examples into her coaching, training, and presentations. Recently, Heidi released her debut book, Talk to Them, Navigating Difficult Conversations with Youth in the Digital Age. Talk to Them is a vital resource for parents and mentors striving to navigate the complexities of the digital age and engage in impactful conversations with the younger generation. Detective Heidi Chance leverages her 27 years of law enforcement experience to provide insightful strategies for engaging these conversations. I mean, I don't know. Heidi, welcome. Because I don't know if you know how much research we've been trying to do, but I tell you every day we get a new DM from someone being like, did you know about this app? My kids were on it talking to X, Y, and Z. It seems like daily there is a new thing online.
Yeah, I mean, that is what's going on. That's what we're facing as far as all of these apps and, even new social media platforms too. And
I
then it's
mean,
doing us favors, obviously, with, watching how the kids join and checking their age and any of that. That's not happening. So,
were you when you were undercover, and like I can't imagine how much like I guess knowledge that you gained during it, but like who was keeping up on all, like in law enforcement, on all of this stuff, so they're able to actually, if there is a problem, they're able to understand how to get into it and try and solve it.
yeah, so a lot of it was us learning, about the new apps through victim interviews or our own kids or, just looking online and seeing how this is happening. It's pretty incredible that all of these apps just pop up every other day, but it is a job in itself just to keep up on all of that.
Yeah,
There
so
are resources out there.
it's pretty shitty that
Yeah.
a lot of the knowledge comes from victim interviews, meaning like we don't even find out about it until often there's a problem.
We needed to make the guide because we had no one to turn. Like we had to create a guide for parents with like 60 websites that we know of and apps that we can block, because peer-to-peer is what's helping us the most right now, and our own kids, because there's nowhere to Google it. You can't Google and say, oh, what apps, there's a few, but the kids are like, oh, that one's an old one. And you're like, I cannot keep up with this.
Yeah, that's awesome that you did that.
What do you think, Heidi? What do you think? So we're sitting here as parents. We did not grow up in the digital world. We were not prepared. When we had kids, we didn't think that we were going to have to be so prepared for it. It's hard to keep up. What is something that you would think that all parents should know that we might not know about that's happening online?
Well, I think that as an undercover, part of what I participated in was catfishing pimps, is what I called it. And it's something that we had started doing. I think that we first started doing it in 2012. And it is where we're trying to engage with these traffickers on these different platforms to have them recruit and groom us instead of a live victim. And what I don't think parents realize is that in doing conversations with pimps, I would do a search warrant for our conversation. And in the capture, I would get all of who he was communicating with during the time that we talked. And the message that was sent to me was sent to hundreds of other profiles, just copied and pasted daily. And it isn't where it was just local to Phoenix. I've had some traffickers that I've extradited all the way from Orlando, Florida to Phoenix to see a judge for trying to recruit and groom me. So it's not just local. They can send these messages out nationwide. And they're doing it all day long because they don't have a normal job. They sit on their butt all day long and send out these messages to recruit and groom new victims. And see
what kind of a message?
Heidi, question for you. I think there's four parts to this, and I'd be so curious, or if I'm going to say four. One, we hear of like grooming so that they can have a relationship. Then there's sextortion. Then there's like a bullying aspect and just a power relationship. And then like the first one is like an actual meetup. Like they want to groom them to have a relationship with them and then lure them either for sex trafficking or to have a relationship, right? Like there's kind of their four tiers to it. is there one that's more prevalent than the other that you were seeing? And like, I'm sure it's changed over time.
Yeah, I mean, just to answer Nat's question real quick,
Thank you.
the message that was being sent was something complimentary, and it's always initially, and that's why these children and victims think that this person's interested in them because they're complimenting them. Oh, you're so fine, blah, blah, blah. I want to get to know you. Do you mind if I get to know you? And they're, very skilled at these manipulative questions, asking and inquiring about this person. And so when you're in a relationship and someone's investing time into getting to know you, you're thinking they like you. And that is exactly how they go through this motion of grooming with these victims, is this idea, or at least this trick, that you might be someone they're interested in. As far as the tiers and what's blowing up and what's more prevalent, I would say we have to be worried about all of it. The sextortion is a really concerning thing that's definitely happening. That is completely different than human trafficking or sex trafficking. Sextortion is people in other countries even that are trying to just hurt Americans, to be honest. And they are
Canadians too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're calling our kids and they are engaging with them in conversations to get them to send inappropriate images so that they can flip the switch and threaten them. And, we have kids that are committing suicide over, I can't come up with $5,000 and this person's threatening to send my image everywhere and I can't tell my parents because I'm going to get in trouble. So these are all things that, we really need as parents to talk to our kids in advance of these things happening. You have to tell them it happened. Recently, there was a news interview of two parents who unfortunately had their 11-year-old boy go through this situation with the sextortion. And the mom literally said to the news media who was interviewing her, I have parental controls on my son's phone. I have talked to him about, these dangerous things. I didn't know, and she says this, I didn't know I needed to talk to my son about someone sending a penis picture to them and what to do about it.
Right.
You do have to
Heidi,
talk about that.
When you say that, I think that it's because it has happened a few times to people directly we know in Toronto. And I think there's two things. Is one, parents don't know in terms of like in Toronto, and I know this is so hard because each law is different. If they get a picture of somebody and they have it on their phone, they can get sextortion by saying, well, you have a picture of me. So now, right, they can manipulate them in so many ways with what they have on their phone, right?
Yes.
Like, so they can take it. And then even if the child's not sending the photo of them, if they have one, they can even get extorted and manipulated and in trouble, because if the kid's young and vulnerable enough and doesn't know, they can say, well, you have a picture of me, you better send it to me or I'm going to the cops to say you have child porn on your phone, right? We've heard of that situation too, where it's gone both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely happening everywhere. Mm-hmm.
So I know you wrote a book about it, but as parents, what are the levels and things? I know like parental control should still happen. Conversations need to happen. What are we saying? Like in terms of, because as you're saying, there's so many different reasons. Because if you're in a relationship and it's sex trafficking, I feel like they feel like they're in love with them. And then boys are also becoming victims of sextortion. We know mostly boys who are getting pictures of girls and being like, oh my God, I've got a hot girl. I'm going to send my dick pic back because it's cool. And then they get like, so there's different things, but what are we saying? And is it different for each gender?
I would say that, first of all, to have these conversations is pretty important. So the national average age of entry into sex trafficking in the United States when I first started investigating this crime was 15. Now, today, nationally, it's 13. I'm not sure what it is in Canada. But it is inching closer and closer to 11, 12-year-olds. We've rescued a couple of those recently in the last couple of months. So that means these conversations have to happen at 8 or 9 and maybe even 7 years old. Certainly when you are having conversations with them about an app on the phone or allowing them to use your iPad or allowing them to have a phone at all, you need to, before those things, get to that point where you're going to give them those things, have these conversations. And then as far as what to say, I think I think ultimately the main thing to come across is anything that you post, anything that you share on the internet doesn't go away. Even as law enforcement, sometimes we're not able to remove images off of the internet. And then you can talk to them about the fact that easily someone could screenshot it and share it in other means, as through text messages or, showing it to people off the phone. And so anything that you share does not go away. So you have to always be mindful of what you're sharing.
Is that why Snapchat really screwed all of us so much? Because they actually think it goes away. They think it's gone. They think, oh no, it's Snapchat, it's safe, it will disappear.
Well, law enforcement can still see it.
Right. Thank you. We'll scare them with that one, Natalie.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have found out that something has happened for some reason, either somebody told you, it got around to, or you were lucky enough that your kid told you that either someone's wanting to meet up or someone has sent a picture or any of the sex extortion, what do you do in that situation? Well, first of all, how should you react to your kid? And then how do you safely get them out of it? Who do you turn to? Because I feel also a lot of parents are like, well, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to do anything because I don't want to make a bigger deal. So what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, your reaction is huge as far as, if you ever want them to tell you anything again, because it will happen again to them. You need to be prepared for your reaction, that it isn't something of, blowing up at them, and that it's, coming from a place of love, and, this is not good, but we're going to work through it, those kind of things. But as far as what to do, a lot of these apps have location services on to work. And so parents need to realize that the other people that the stranger that your child might be communicating with may already know the kind of general area of where you live, which is very concerning. Some of these apps, if you log out of it, the entire conversation disappears. So if you were wanting to pursue charges and have police come and capture evidence, logging out is going to be a missed opportunity for us to get the evidence. So don't log out. Don't engage with the person and take over the profile, because there's certain things that, like entrapment and things like that we have to be careful of. And so it's best to have a person that's trained in having these undercover conversations to take over the profile if that's the route you want to go. I have myself taken over profiles before with parents' permission. There was a 16-year-old who unfortunately met a guy on an app, on a social media platform. She thought he was a student at her school. He had come to the house. Mom wasn't home. They ended up having sex. He wanted to do it again, and she said, no, I don't feel like it. That's not going to happen. And then he started telling her, well, I'm going to tell everyone that you're a hoe and all this stuff and spread rumors about you. And ultimately, I was able to find him because in his profile picture that she had captured, he had a lanyard on. And I thought it was a school lanyard. So I literally went to every single school in the area because she said it seemed like he walked to her house. He didn't have a car. He was nearby. And ultimately, I found when I was driving down the main road, a business. It's called U-Haul. It's you rent vehicles when you move.
We have it, yeah.
I saw people smoking out front, and I was like, wait a minute, because you could barely make out the lettering of the lanyard, on the lanyard. And I pulled up to one of them. I saw what I thought was a match. I went inside, and unfortunately, I had my folder with my whole case, and I dropped a piece of paper that had a photo of this person I suspected it was. And the girl, when I asked her, well, who do I subpoena? How do I get the information of your employees here? She must have tipped him off. So that Monday, I get a call from a defense attorney representing so-and-so. And I'm like, well, I'm not telling you what's going on with my investigation, but thank you for identifying my suspect. And
right.
And the victim positively identified him. We were able to charge him. But that is all, a lot of moving parts, obviously, that detectives should be doing. As far as some other things to know about these apps, some of them, the person on the other side can delete the conversation. So if you as the parent do engage with that person and they get like hinked up and they're thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like the little girl I've been talking to, they could delete the whole thing. So ultimately what to do is call the police right away. Don't communicate. Don't log out of the app. Don't screenshot because it might tell the other person you screenshotted. Any of those things. If you happen to have a second phone, take the second phone and record from the second phone. But if you don't have a second phone, wait for law enforcement. Don't touch the phone and let us. Hopefully, we can take over that profile and get that person so they don't do it to someone else.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
When it's so hard being a parent right now, when you've met with parents and victims, how many, I think every parent's like, my kid would never. How, have you ever met a parent who thought their kid would?
No, of course not. I mean, it's always my kid would never.
You say that, but we talk to parents every day who are like, my kid doesn't even know what that is.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but in terms, no, she's joking. I know I'm saying, but we hear it every day where they're like, my kid doesn't even know what that is. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How savvy are the kids versus the parents in your experience right now? And how much as parents are we blind to what they actually know? Because I'm sure they tell us a peanut of what they know, what's going on.
I don't think it's so much that the kids are savvy. I think it's that the bad guys posing as peers that the kid thinks is the same age as them, those individuals are savvy. Those individuals are introducing this idea. Those individuals are saying, keep this conversation a secret. Those individuals are saying, delete the messages or send me this emoji if your mom walks in. Those individuals are coming up with all of the ideas that is, causing your child to unfortunately follow along and unfortunately do what they ask.
Is there one app that is the most notorious for engaging with this behavior or with people, with predators or perpetrators? I don't know what they're called, but people engaging with children that we should be aware of?
Well, obviously Snapchat's really, really dangerous, but even Instagram now is moving towards, if you screen record or screenshot someone's story, it'll tell them. So Instagram's moving towards all the things that Snapchat's doing. And obviously there are other apps out there. There's one called Moco Space, which in my opinion is kind of like the dark web, but on regular Google. You can buy guns, you can buy people, you can buy drugs. I've had a couple of victims, unfortunately, be recruited and groomed off of Moco Space. So it's a pretty bad one.
Moco.
How are you, for the majority of victims that you have worked with, how are they getting to you? Like, how far has it gone? And how does it eventually get to you?
Yeah. So typically it's a situation where it's a kid that ran away, and whether it's patrol that contacts them in a vehicle or they show up to a hotel for a loud noise complaint or a party. When we contact people, we identify who we're out with. And, cops, we kind of know when people are lying to us, and especially when kids are giving false information, it's just not adding up to your birthday. We take you down to the police station and fingerprints don't lie, and we're able to identify some of these kids that way. And then, it's a situation where you need a skilled interviewer to talk to a child that's reluctant to talk to you. They don't want to talk to you. They're in love with their trafficker. And so as a forensic interviewer, I both interview and then I teach other law enforcement about how to get that rapport and how to get to the bottom of the truth of what's been going on, and build an investigation. A lot of these cases are really hard to prove because they are his word against her word typically. And so we use corroborative evidence. It could be the DNA, if they were sexually active. It could be cell phones. It could be computers, video surveillance, other witnesses, hotel receipts, GPS tracking, all kinds of other things that we could use to give more weight to what the victim is describing did happen versus what the suspect says. And, these cases, a lot of times I don't have really good outcomes because a lot of times these kids, especially those that are chronic runaways or in child welfare custody, they turn 18 and they dip out and they don't cooperate anymore. And unfortunately, this trafficker is able to traffic again. And unfortunately, it's other kids. And so I've had several traffickers that I've tried to pursue in that way. And ultimately, I'm getting them. But now we've had to evolve our investigations and do more than just victim-based cases, because they're not, even if we did put them into prison or jail, I've had 4 traffickers that got out and went back to trafficking again and trafficking kids. So my mind is, okay, we need to take them out at the knees. And so in doing that, we need to do financial investigations against them, seize all of their assets, seize their bank account, their cars, their Rolex watches and Gucci purses, and all the things that they think that they can have when they get out of jail, so that when they get out, they don't have anything and they're not able to return to it.
Heidi?
Yeah.
In terms of God, I'm like, are there people who are in a suburban household that are also getting sex trafficked off of these social media apps? Because I think a lot of people think it's only children who might be at risk or teens who are at risk. Is it a percentage one way or the other, or are you seeing it across the board everywhere?
Yeah, so I do have that question asked a lot. And the way that I explain it is I described the biggest case in my career. It was 7 victims, 2 juveniles, but 5 adults. And in that one case, and it was one trafficker, it was familial trafficking. He was trafficking his 13-year-old niece and 17-year-old stepdaughter, and then 5 other adult females. But in that case, one of the adult females was in her 40s. She was a Department of Corrections officer working at the prison, lost her job, became a stripper, and then met that trafficker and became part of his brothel that he was having out of his house. And so in her 40s, she entered the life of prostitution. Same case, a 19-year-old, barely an adult, but she was up at college, and she was on Craigslist, and someone offered to take modeling pictures of her, and that guy introduced her to the brothel owner, and then she became a victim of his as well.
And she's a college student.
Yeah, college student. And she was from Scottsdale, Arizona. If you've ever heard of Scottsdale, it's well off. Like, her mom's a nurse. No history of any sexual abuse or child neglect or anything going on that would be, something that you would say would be this person already vulnerable. Her vulnerability and that's what it is vulnerabilities. Her vulnerability may have been that on that day she was feeling down about her appearance or self-esteem and engaged with this person who was dangerous, and that introduced her to the other person. The Department of Corrections officer losing her job, that's her vulnerability. So really that's the other part of this is traffickers are super good at seeking out people with a vulnerability, and that's who they seek out to exploit.
And they don't necessarily, they may not necessarily be it could just be a moment, but then they're so good at capturing that moment and then just manipulating them until it's too late. So someone like us, our daughters could have a vulnerable moment. Mm-hmm. And then before they know it, one thing leads to another.
Yeah. Yeah. They, like I said, they have no job. Their only job all day long is to manage the victims that they have right now. And because they want to make as much money as possible, seek out new ones by the recruitment of, new individuals. And it's not just online, it's any opportunity that they have, because that is their entire goal, their entire mindset.
Heidi, I have a really random question for you, but a lot of the DMs that come in to our daughter's accounts, which I see are, can you send me feet pictures? Does it start or want to be my sugar baby or
sugar baby?
Does it start like that often? And because the TV shows have made it it's cool to be there's, Netflix series on how to be a sugar baby. Does that make it seem more acceptable? Have you seen that route? Is that a route that's happening? Is that a conversation okay, this isn't cute. This is actually sex trafficking.
Yeah. And I think that if they think the sugar baby thing seems a little bit more innocent, because so many of the stories put those girls sort of you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. But a sex trafficker could, like you're saying, pretend to be one of those people to open the relationship.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that it's super dangerous, the sugar baby thing. And traffickers can swoop in and say, hey, that's really dangerous to go to random dudes' houses and hang out with them. How about I be your protection? And that's where they, come in with I'm going to provide you protection. I'm going to provide you instruction on how to do this safely. And then before you know it, they're giving them the money and they're stuck in this situation with this trafficker. Absolutely.
Heidi, in your book, I know you talked when you say talk to your kids, have the difficult conversations. Can you tell us one or two things or three things that those difficult conversations are, and what's the driving point you want parents to hear to get into their? We want to make you out of a job, Heidi, but it sounds like it's not possible with all this that's going on. But what can we say to kids so we can help parents everywhere make this easier so that we're not having to find these people everywhere?
Yeah, I think it's important. And what I talk about in the book is, people's perception of what a bad guy looks like is something that you need to think about, because a bad guy could be anyone you're standing next to. It's not going to be what we think a creeper looks like. And so you need to change your mindset about what a bad guy looks like, that it could be anyone. And then obviously the, situation where we talked already about the idea is coming from the other person. So if you do find that your child has said, sent something or engaged in a conversation with a stranger, the idea came from the other person. Don't be mad at your kid, those kind of things. And then, personal information, that's always something that initially there's, seeking out, whereabouts do you live? Where do your parents work? How old are your siblings? Where do they go to school? Where do you go to school? Do you even like school? That conversation is definitely the personal information sharing. Them seeking out that information is part of this. Traffickers use that to flip it on them and threaten them about, I'm going to hurt your parents. I know all these things about you. And that's seen over and over and over again. So we know when we describe what even sex trafficking is, it's force, fraud, or coercion. And so force is pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be a violent incident, some visible sign of injury. But the fraud and the coercion are part of what we've been talking about already here. The fraud could be, as the trafficker, I'm going to take you traveling. I'm going to get you to cosmetology school. I'm going to get you a car. We gotta, do this right now because I'm going to get you all those things. But all those things never happen. So that's the fraud. And then the coercion, I equate that to the threats, all the things that this trafficker's learned about you because you unfortunately answered personal questions. They're going to use that against you. And I always say this when I talk about traffickers: a trafficker or a pimp, that's one and the same person, same behavior. It's just two different names for the same person. They're the most reliable person you'll ever meet. If they say they're going to beat you up, they're going to beat you up. If they say they're going to get you in the car and they're going to take you to mom's house and they're going to shoot up your mom's house, depending on how they feel at that moment, kicking and screaming, they're going to grab you by the hair, they're going to stuff you in the car, they're going to drive you to your mom's house, and they're going to point that gun because they need their victims to believe that what I say is going to happen. Otherwise, these victims wouldn't stay in this situation. So really, that is the way that this goes down and works. And parents really need to understand that is how concerning it is. And that's why people are stuck in this situation. As an expert witness, I testify a lot. And, my whole ulterior motive for doing a lot of the, podcast interviews that I'm doing, not just to promote my book, but to reach potential jurors, people in the audience, your listeners, because I need jurors to understand that when I testify that this person's a victim, number one, and yes, I'm describing them committing crimes, I'm describing them committing prostitution acts, but they're a victim. And I also need a jury to understand and wrap their head around, they're not necessarily, I'm not going to describe them locked in a closet or handcuffed to a bed. They're freely walking on the side of the road with a phone in their hand, but they're not free to leave. They are trapped. And I need a jury to understand that. So that is, the ultimate thing that is my intention for getting the word out there, as an informed public, as an informed jury, which helps me get cases. That case that I talked about with the 7 victims, that went to trial for 7 months, and he was found guilty on 101 out of 105 counts and sentenced to 493.5 years in prison.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that only happens with an informed jury.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
But informed children hopefully don't get in the position. So, we also, it's so, I think that as parents, we need to do more. So this is really hard because I think that I haven't had this conversation with them. And, shame on me. We've talked about it in broad strokes, but the fact that it can happen to boys to girls, and it's just different levels of manipulation online. And I think that a lot of parents, want to be like, oh, my kid wouldn't meet up with someone they know to talk to strangers. But to them, these people aren't strangers. They become their friends, or they're people they have relationships with, because they're experts at becoming chameleons, which is what you're saying. They're experts at friending all of their friends to look exactly like them and to talk exactly like them.
Yeah, and then these platforms like Facebook calling it friends in the whole first place.
Right.
Talking to your kids about, these aren't people we know in real life. These are strangers.
Mm-hmm.
But they are acting like they're 12 years old also or not. That's a stranger. Your friend is someone that you know that could come over after school and have snacks over here and play games with you. That is a friend. These things are not friends.
Oh my gosh, this reminded, like when I was growing up, I watched so much of How to Catch a Predator, and it was actually a really good example, like even though it was like so dramatic and it was still like Hollywood too, like there was always this young girl and there was you that was behind the computer, like luring them in, and like, they don't have the shows like that anymore. I guess nobody's watching them, but that was like the first time I watched it all go down.
Yeah, I don't know if you all have seen Sound of Freedom.
No, tell us more.
No.
Okay. Well, Sound of Freedom was out on Amazon, and it's more an example of international human trafficking. But my actual police unit, my human trafficking unit, we were filmed for 3 years. And Frontline PBS, they were from Britain, the director, they did a documentary on my unit, and it's called Sex Trafficking in America.
Oh.
And it's on YouTube now or Frontline PBS. And that's a really good example of how this is happening domestically.
Oh, yes, that's so good to watch.
Yeah, so it took 3 years because the video or the documentary was originally supposed to be about the female detectives, the 4 of us fighting for women, but then it turned into more when they rescued a juvenile, and it followed her case all the way through to the end. And it's, she met the guys online, and she kind of was sold between the 3 of them. And, she actually is in the documentary, the juvenile, talking through what happened, and ultimately the conclusion of how they got put in prison. But it's a really good depiction of how this happens.
Did we get, do you think that we got that written down?
Yeah.
Kat?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have. I've been writing down notes too, and also we should link. We actually did an interview with someone who was sex trafficked. She was a survivor, and she shared her story, and you would never believe it. She was from one of the small towns outside of here, and her story would be such a good understanding after talking to you about someone who looks, she thought she was in a relationship and she wasn't, and she couldn't get out, and it was really frightening for her. So I think that the conversation of hearing the victim, what they go through, is really helpful as a parent to understand, because we maybe all dated someone that we shouldn't have, but there wasn't coercion maybe to the point, but it's to the point where you're like, I can't get out of this, because it's like, it's so hard. But imagine the next level of threats on top of you. I can't imagine how they would feel like they have no exit. They're so young, they have no exit. They're like, I'm stuck here. So thank you for what you're doing, Heidi. Oh my God. Like, as parents, I'm like so thankful there's women like you. I mean, and writing books for us. Like, truly, we can get the book everywhere. I'm going to go buy that book. Is it on Amazon or where is it?
Yeah, and I'm supporting a fellow female officer. She's translating it for me in Spanish in print copy, and then she's going to read it audibly in an audiobook so I can reach other parents, because that's a vulnerability in itself. A child from a parent that doesn't speak English, a trafficker is going to target that kid, because that kid, may not tell their parents, and their parents won't know what's going on because they don't speak English.
Yep. Okay.
Heidi, I mean, I can't even believe you have time to talk and do podcasts. I'm like, you are like remarkable. We appreciate your time and, you educating us, and we will do our best to make sure that people find you, listen to you, read your book, and get the word out, especially to help these women not get re-victimized and put these people freaking away for life.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about.
Thank you for everything you do, Heidi.
Thank you.
You. So nice to meet you.
You too.
So nice to meet you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.